So welcome back, everybody. My name is Paul, and today I'm going to continue in a series I have of little inspiring little stories. We call them satsang stories, or little parables, or vignettes, and so on, that have a little spiritual teaching behind them, a little bit of a moral story here. So I had another video that I made that had about 5 or 6 of them, I think, and today I'm going to do a couple more. What I did was I wrote a bunch of these stories out, and I wrote them out with a lot of thoughtfulness because I could edit and so on. But when I tell them verbally, it's difficult. So let's see how it goes. So the first thing I'm going to tell about is the story of the jewel thief and the goddess. Now, once upon a time, there was there's a big town. There a whole lot of festivals used to happen, very spiritual festivals. It's basically a holy town. A lot of villagers lived there as well. But there was a band of thieves that lived in the neighborhood, and they would all get together and talk about things. And one of the things that they had a problem with is that, there weren't the people who come to the festivals. A lot of them weren't very rich, so they couldn't really rob much from them. So they would sit around and talk. And one day they were sitting around talking, and this one particular young man was at one of these old gatherings, and he heard one of the other guys saying, "Look, whatever you do, if one of these near spiritual festivals, don't ever listen to anything that you hear over there, because if you start hearing them give that satsang when they're giving that discourse, immediately plug your ears and get out of there so that you don't hear anything more." Because there was a guy one day that years ago, one of our brothers, he went to one of those festivals and he sat there, and after a few days, he never was a thief anymore. He just walks around now with a stick and a bow. So whatever you do, don't go near those spiritual festivals. So this was the common talk among the thieves at the time. So it turns out there was a very big spiritual festival coming into town, and this one young man, a very enterprising young man, he got an idea. He said, "Well, I'll tell you what, all these guys are going to be looking at this festival. They're all going to be over there at this festival, and while they're over there, I'm going to go rob the queen. I'm going to take her necklace, because I've heard some stories of where she keeps it up there, and I have some pals in the back there, and I'm going to go get it." So the big day came, and all the spiritual people were there, and they're having a big, huge outdoor program, and everybody was giving discourse and powerful teachings. So the young man had a very good opportunity. He went over to the Queen's palace, and he did his thing, and he got up the ladder and whatever, and got the necklace and a few other things, and he stuck them in a little bag, and he ran down. And then he was running by, and he was coming near this festival. He was near the festival where the stage was. He was back over there sneaking around the back, and he tripped, he fell, and he hit himself, and he dropped his bag, and he started freaking out. And he heard one sentence from the discourses: "And goddesses never blink, and goddesses never blink." And he remembered what he was told in that meeting with the other thieves, and he just immediately closed his ears and grabbed his bag and went off and went his way and ran away and hid the necklace. And then the next day, of course, there's all news. Someone had stolen the Queen's necklace, and they know that all the thieves don't go into the meeting, so they figured, well, it must have been one of those thieves. And they kind of asked around. Someone said they had seen that one particular thief over there by the back of the stage, and so they went and arrested this dude. And fortunately, he had hid the necklace and everything, and he didn't have it, and they arrested him. He said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have anything. I don't know what you're talking about." So they took him to jail. And they thought, well, the police were having a real hard time, because he said, "Man, he's probably the one. He's probably the one that did it. But we don't have any evidence. We don't know what to do." So they finally got this idea that, okay, well, there's a goddess that the thieves love. I forgot her name. There's just some deity that the thieves love, and they pray to her, and maybe she'll help them out in their little enterprise and so on. So the police had this idea, so maybe we'll get this little young lady, and we'll dress her up in all these clothes, and we'll send her into prison at night and just kind of whisper to him and wake him up from his dream and talk to him and see maybe he'll confess and tell us where the necklace is. So everybody thought, well, that sounds like a great idea. So they found this one lady who kind of looked like the traditional deity, and they dressed her all up in the right costumes. And one night, the prisoner was sitting in the cell. He's wondering, he's praying, like, I don't know, he's praying to the goddess, like, please, I don't know, if I ever get out of here, I'll never be a thief again. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry about what I've done and everything. So this little lady comes in and knocks on the cell door, and you know, and she says, "Oh, hi, hello. I heard that you're such a wonderful thief, and I've answered your prayers, so I've come to visit you." So the thieves start thinking, "Oh, wow, she really answered my prayer. See, that my other buddies are right. It really is a thief goddess, and she comes and she helps us out." So he's thinking about, and the goddess is like saying, "Oh, you're such a wonderful thief. You're such excellent at your craft. But pray tell me, where did you find a clever place to hide that necklace?" So the thief is getting all impressed, and then he just notices, well, this woman blinked, and she remembered immediately, uh-oh, goddesses never blink, so this must not be the real goddess, this is a trick. So he started catching on. He started saying, "Well, I'll tell you what, goddess, I appreciate that you honor me and everything, but it really wasn't me. I really didn't take that necklace, and I don't know where it is, but if you just let me out, I wish they would let me out, because then I could help them find it. So, well, the lady came back and told the policeman, said, "Well, I went down there, and he really acted like he believed me. He just really was so impressed, and I was really sweet to him and everything. But one thing he says he didn't really take the necklace, but he would like to help you find it. And, he didn't do it." So the police said, "Well, it must have been okay. So they let the guy out, and he started immediately helping them. He regretted what he had done. He helped them. He gave some hints here and there, and he said, "Look over here, look over there," and finally they found it. And then, the queen was so happy with him, and just to honor him. He was sort of truthfulness and so on. And next thing you know, he started listening to the festival, and after a while, he was wandering around with a stick and a bowl, just like the other guy. The lesson is, if you listen to a true spiritual teaching and you get some inspiration in some small way, it can change your life. That's a small lesson. So the next one I have is the one about the yogi and the merchant. Now, I'll try to retell it in a way that is entertaining. But once upon a time, there was a young man, and he traveled to a nearby town. In those days, it was custom to travel. You go find a guru and someone that you feel in love for and connection with, and they teach you some techniques. So he found a beautiful one that he loved in another town, and the man was a little older than him, and said, "Look, son, I'll teach you some techniques. I see you're very sincere, and I know you'll practice them. So just go back to your hometown and live there. And but one thing, just live very, very simply. Don't make your life too complicated, and you'll grow in spiritual experience and knowledge and everything is going to be beautiful. Your basic needs will be taken care of, and always go to the temple and make contributions there in every way, and then I'll come and visit you someday." So this man went back to his town. Everything was fine. He got himself a little set up on the edge of town with a little blanket and a little umbrella and place to sleep at night, and a little, he had an old bandana thing, a little loincloth, he put it on his waist and everything. And that was his life. He had a little bowl. So every morning what he'd do is, every night he'd go to bed and he'd hang up his little loincloth on a tree there, and then he'd go to sleep, and then next morning he'd go to town, and the villagers got to know him after a while. So, well, there's that guy, he's a nice young man, he's got some techniques, he's practicing as the student of this guru that we know, and we honor him and everything. So they gave him little donations and everything, and it was fine. He was beautiful. He practiced meditation, and the people loved him and everything. And then one day, he woke up, and his loincloth had holes in it because the rats had been eating it, and he didn't know what to do. And now he's got to go to bed. Now he's got to beg for food, and he's got to beg for a loincloth. So he goes, and someone says, okay, a merchant says, "Hey, I have some clothing store and some merchant stuff, and I'll give you, a loincloth, a new one. But I'll tell you what, I got an idea. You don't want the rats to eat your clothing, so why don't you just get yourself a little cat?" As I know somebody who's got a little cat, and you take care of that little cat, and the cat will keep the mice away, and you'll be no problem. And every day when you come to town, you beg a little bit, and people know you. They say, "Hey, can you give me a little extra milk for my cat?" And We'll be fine, see? So after a while, the villagers got used to it. They gave him a little money for his food, and then they gave him a little extra milk for his cat, and everything went fine for a long time. But then that villager, the one merchant in town, the one that gave him the cat, and said, look, he got thinking. Said, I know what this guy needs. He needs a cow. If he had a cow, then he'd have milk, and the milk would feed the cat, and everything would be fine. And he'd have food, and everything would be fine. Just a milk, a cow, beautiful. So we finally persuade the little yogi. He said, okay, look, if you just get this one cow, you get one cow to give us the milk, and the milk is food for you and the cat, and then everything, all your problems is going to be solved. Just fine. You can meditate in peace and everything. So the village, the yogi started thinking, that sounds like a good idea. So he got himself a cow, and he went over. Now, along this time, some time passed, and then the teacher, the guru, young man, started thinking, I haven't heard from that guy for a long time. I think I'm going to take a trip to his village and say hello, see how he's doing. So by this time, a few years had passed, and he goes over to the town where the guy lived, and he starts asking around, hey, did you see this, have you seen this young man? He should be about such and such age and look such and such, and he'd probably be living in a little hut at the edge of town, and he would be coming in every day to beg for a little bit of food and so on. He asked around, a lot of people then said, hey, I haven't seen that guy, I just don't know, just don't recognize what you're asking about. So finally he comes across, and he's at one store, and there's this merchant there, and there's the one with the cow, and the cat, and the milk, and he says, I do remember that guy, that young man, I think I do remember him. So he starts telling the yogi, he says, look, I'll tell you what, you go down this road a few miles, down this town, toward way out of the town here, a few miles, and if you come across, there's a farm there, and a barn, and everything, and you'll see there's a pretty big house there, and you can go, and I think he lives over there now. So the yogi started thinking, I don't know, I don't think it's him, and if it is him, I better have a talk with him. So he walks out of town a few miles, and he comes across this really big farm, and a whole bunch of cows there, and a big barn, and there's all kinds of cats running around, and catching the rats, and he's sitting there at a table doing his books in his big house, and the yogi knocks on the door, and the guy like, oh my God. He recognizes his voice, and it's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You told me to live simply, and the merchant persuaded me. First he got me a cat, and then he got me a cow, and next thing you know, I have more cows and I have more cats, and now I don't know what to do. I can't practice much because I don't have much time. So the guru says, well, look, okay, that's what happened in your life. Just enjoy this and help the village, and make sure this town will have a beautiful temple and spiritual festivals, and it'll be honored, and we'll all have a great gathering here and bring lots of love to this town. So you did the service of being wealthy here like that, and there are other people. Just make sure you support the temple and the yogis who live the way I suggested you lived some years ago. So that's another little town. Now I have another little short video or story I'll tell. Now, in traditional Buddhist, English, or Hindu tradition, that a yogi and a teacher would often walk with a student. In the old days, it was very personal. You walk with, you actually know your teacher, and you physically accompany them and do things with them, and you learn a whole lot that way. And it's not very easy these days to have that kind of a relationship with an actual teacher where you're actually walking together and doing things together and hanging out. Now, they often travel from town to town because they would meet and teach and everything, and meet other gurus and so on. So this particular man, he was a yogi, and he had a student with him. And they're walking from town to town, and they are getting tired toward the end of the day, and they come across this little town. And by that time, getting dark, and people lock up the doors, and they didn't know what to do. So they said, well, the temple's here. And, we respectfully lay ourselves down in the corner of this temple and not bother anybody, and we'll get up really early in the morning and say our prayers and be on our way. Now, in the conversation that a teacher has often with the student, which is basically the the erosion of the self-importance. The I'm self-important. It's okay to be I, but don't be too self-important about it, because the yogis have these conversations with each other. This is what the conversation was during the day, and then they come to sleep at night in this temple. Now, in the middle of the night here, very, very early in the morning, there's a temple caretaker. He comes in there and he sees these two people look like vagrants and sleeping in the temple. And he starts getting annoyed and angry with them. So he starts scolding. He pokes them with a stick and he starts scolding them. Like, what are you doing here? You sleeping in the temple, you vagrants here, you know. I don't know what you're doing here. Get the heck out of here. So the student starts stepping up and says, "Excuse me, I'm a student. I'm a student of this guru here, and I've been walking, and it's our right to stay in the temple here. We're holy people from walking from town to town." So, well, the caretaker of the temple wasn't very impressed with that. He starts grabbing the guy by the ear, and just twisting it and yanking him, and says, "You get the heck out of my temple here. You're just a nutcase, you know. Get on your way and be out of here." So the guy like rubbed his ear and like, pissing, cursing, and everything. He's walking on. Meanwhile, his teacher is sleeping back in, still back there. So the man walks out of town. He's pissed off and everything. And he finally gets to a nearby town and just takes a rest and waits for his teacher to come and catch up with him. So after a little while, the guy comes back and walking around. He's cheerfully hanging out, just having a good time, just relaxing, and no problem. So the young student says to his guru, like, "Well, what happened here? You know, how come they yanked my ear and they pulled me and they kicked me and threw me out of the temple?" And the master said, "Well, you just tried to be something." So the student said, "What happened to you?" He says, "Well, I'll tell you what, I just acted crazy." I said, "I don't know. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm old. I don't know what to do. I'm sorry, you know." And he said, "Well, he felt a little sorry for me, and we sat together for a bit of meditation, and, you know, we did our little pranams and everything there, and then he sent me on the way with a little bit of extra food." So the moral of the story is, well, don't try to be something, because that's the big thumb always gets hit, you know. So what we extend ourselves out there in pride, it can really come back to haunt us, because so that's why a lot of the great teachers, they have every right to be, you know, some of these. I mean, I've met some people personally that they have every right. I mean, they're just flowing energy. There's so much radiance coming out of them, you know, and yet those kind of people are the humblest people I've ever met. You know, just really gentle people. Because they're in a different kind of place. So that was a little parable. So I hope you entertained. I entertained you with those little few stories here. I'm going to make a bunch more. I guess we got 18 minutes here, so I have a few more stories. And what I'll do is I'll make these videos fairly short, and I'll try to combine them in small ways to make it, like, you know, palatable. Smaller is better, a little bit to take in. So okay, thanks again for listening. Please like and share if you. I watch a lot of other people's content. I get so inspired, and some humor and some metaphors and some parables are really useful in our journey in this life. And a couple more stories that are going to come up here. I have one called the land where everything costs 2 cents. It's quite long and it's funny. And then the one about the genie, the genie and the yogi. The Emperor and the Genie. So, okay, I'll leave it at that, and hope to see you in some of my other videos.